story of Mr. Noisy. Mr. Noisy was a very, very noisy person indeed. For example, if Mr. Noisy was reading this story to you, he'd be shouting at the top of his voice, and the top of Mr. Noisy's voice is a very loud place indeed. You could hear it 100 miles away. For example, when most people sneeze, you can hear it in the next room, but achoo! When Mr. Noisy sneezes, you can hear him in the next country. Now, this story starts when Mr. Noisy was asleep in bed in his bedroom in his house, which is on top of a hill. He was snoring and as you can well imagine, when Mr. Noisy snores, that is a snore with hearing. It sounds like a herd of elephants in a snore. Then Mr. Noisy's alarm clock went off. Mr. Noisy's alarm clock sounds like no other alarm clock in the world. Sounds like a fire engine. Mr. Noisy woke up, and so did all the people who lived in Wobble Town, which is at the bottom of Mr. Noisy's hill. Later that day, Mr. Noisy decided that he had to go shopping. He went out of his house, shutting the door behind him. Bang! And the door wobbled. The house wobbled. The whole hill wobbled. Wobble Town wobbled. Even a bird flying high above wobbled. Then Mr. Noisy walked down the hill. Cluck, cluck, cluck. He walked into the baker shop. Crash went the door as he opened. Bang went the door as he shut it. I'd like a loaf of bread, boomed Mr. Noisy to Mrs. Crumb, the baker's wife. Mrs. Crumb trembled and sold him a loaf. Then Mr. Noisy walked on the street to a butcher. Cup, cup, cup. He walked into the butcher shop. Crash went the door as he opened. Bang went the door as he shut it. I'd like a piece of meat. Boomed Mr. Noisy too. Mr. Bacon the butcher and Mr. Bacon trembled and sold him some meat. Afterwards, Mrs. Crumb met Mr. Bacon in the street. We really must do something about Mr. Noisy being so noisy, she said. Absolutely, replied Mr. Bacon. But what? I know, said Mrs. Crumb, and she whispered into Mr. Bacon's ear. Mr. Bacon smiled a small, turned to a broad grin. Mrs. Crumb said, I think you have the answer to that. Following day, Mr. Noisy again went shopping down to Wobble Town. Cluck, cluck, cluck. He went into Mrs. Crumb's shop. I'd like a loaf of bread, he boomed. Sorry? What did you say? Asked Mrs. Crumb, pretending not to hear. I'd like a loaf of bread, Mr. Noisy shouted. Sorry, said Mrs. Crumb, putting her hand to her ear. Can you speak up, please? I'd like a loaf of bread, roared Mr. Noisy. Can't hear you, replied Mrs. Crumb. Mr. Noisy gave up and went out. Mr. Noisy went into Mr. Bacon's shop. I'd like a piece of meat, he boomed. Mr. Bacon pretended not to notice. I'd like a piece of meat, Mr. Noisy shouted. Did you say something? Asked Mr. Bacon. I said I'd like a piece of meat, roared Mr. Noisy. Hard, said Mr. Bacon. Mr. Noisy gave up and went out. And went home and went to bed hungry. It's only like this way. And the day after Mr. Noisy tried again, he went to Mrs. Crumb's shop. I'd like a loaf of bread, he boomed. A what? Asked Mrs. Crumb. Mr. Noisy started shouting at the top of his voice. I'd like a loaf of, and then he stopped. Then he thought, and he said quietly, I'd like a loaf of bread. Then Mr. Noisy went to Mr. Bacon's shop. I'd like a piece of meat, he boomed. Did you say something? Asked Mr. Bacon. Yes, I did, shouted Mr. Noisy. Very talked. I said I'd like a... And then he stopped. And then he said, I'd like a piece of meat, please. So, carrying the bread and the meat, Mr. Noisy set up the hill. Clump, clump, clump. And they stopped. They thought, man, do you know what he did? He tiptoed. I think that was something Mr. Noisy never tried before. Mr. Noisy arrived at his front door. He put out his hand to open the door. And then he stopped. And he thought, you know what he did? He opened the door very quietly. He stepped inside and shut the door very gently. Quietly, a gentle thing Mr. Noisy never tried before either. That was fun too. Do you know something? From then until now, Mr. Noisy, anything like noisy as he used to be. And do you know something else? He wobbled town delighted, especially Mrs. Crumb and Mr. Bacon. Do you know something else? Mr. Noisy has learned how to whisper.